We are all natural storytellers. From a young age, we are able to put events together in an order that lets our listeners imagine whatever is being described, as well as the time and place and the characters involved. These things are all important parts of a story that will help to keep it running smoothly and developing in a logical way that the reader can understand and follow. The time and place in which a story occurs is called the setting. The people or actors in our stories are called the characters, and the series of things that occur in the story is called a plot. It is the plot of a story that will be our focus today. This painting by Joyce Wieland is an interesting place to start thinking about storytelling in art. In one painting, she has actually shown us a sequence of events frame by frame. We start off with an ocean liner sailing in open waters. The sky is blue with white clouds and smoke streaming from its smokestacks. Which frame in the painting comes next, and which one after that? Follow the frames through the painting until you reach the end. How does this story end? Now think about this. How did you know the right order to follow? I'll bet it wasn't too hard to figure out. You just looked for the small changes in the scene from one frame to the next to help you know what happened. Even with very few details, we are pretty good at understanding an order of events, where the story starts and where it ends. Before we move on, spend a moment looking at the painting frame by frame. What do you think about the two black frames at the end? Why are they different than the others? And what do you think this means? If you spend some time thinking about stories, especially the really good ones, you'll begin to notice that most follow a pretty similar pattern. In its simplest form, we can say that every story has 3 steps. The beginning, where we meet the characters in the setting and start off on our journey. The middle, where all of the action happens. And the end, where hopefully we find our happily ever after when all of the problems have been resolved. If we think about the way a story unfolds through those 3 steps, we can draw a storyline from the beginning to the end that is roughly the shape of a triangle, based on how exciting or dramatic each moment of the story is. The point at the top of the triangle is where the story is the most exciting. From one story to the next, the shape of the triangle may change, but the path is usually the same. In the beginning, we are introduced to the characters in the setting. The storyline starts at the bottom and moves slowly up as we set the scene for the story until something happens to get things going. We call this something the inciting event, and from this point on, the story moves up faster. This is where all the action happens and where the excitement, fear, or stress starts to build. This is the conflict in our story, the problem that needs to be solved. Just before we reach the top, we have what we call the crisis. This is the point where something important is about to happen, where a choice is made that will change the story altogether. Just after the crisis, we reach the climax, the peak of our story triangle. This is the most exciting part of the story, the part where the something that I just mentioned actually takes place. We hit the climax, something occurs, and we have to follow the rest. Once we pass the climax, the action falls and everything begins to wrap up towards the end. Hopefully, our happily ever after. Most authors and storytellers follow this pattern when they are creating their stories, whether they are imaginary or retelling of actual events that have happened. We are so tuned into the pattern of a story that we follow it without even knowing. Artists are storytellers too. Within an artwork, you can find setting, characters, and action, along with many clues to help you fill in the before and after the particular moment pictured. Where an author has the time and space to tell you each part of the story, an artist must spend some time carefully thinking about exactly which moment they are going to share. You might think that every artist would choose the most exciting part, the climax of the story, for their paintings, but the truth is, each artist and each painting is different. The artist chooses their moment based on what they want the viewer, the person looking at their work, to feel or think, what they want them to learn, and what they want the viewer to understand about the story. Let's look at a few examples. Here we have another work by Joyce Wieland. As you can see, her artistic practice includes lots of different ways of making art: painting, sculpture, and even quilting. This artwork is called Swan's Cupboard, and it includes a lot of different pieces. Pause the video for a moment and talk about all of the different things that you can see in the picture. To get the full experience of this artwork, you really have to see it in person. There are lots of pieces and you can walk all the way around it. Here are some of the pieces, starting from the biggest and then working our way around to the smaller parts. There is a wall made of old barn board and a cupboard with 2 crooked doors made of the same material. The shelves are all at different levels, and it doesn't look like it is in very good condition. Based on what you see, where do you think you might find this shelf in real life? In front of the shelf are 4 large swans. If you are in kindergarten, the swans would be almost as tall as you. What are they doing? How do you imagine the swans feel in this moment? My guess is that they are curious. The one in the back is stretching its neck up high to see what is on the tallest shelf and spreading its wings to help it balance. The one with the curvy neck also looks curious, but I think maybe a bit nervous too. Swans often hold their heads down and stretched out like this when they are ready to chase someone away. The other 2 swans are a little less interested, but all 4 of them are looking in the same direction towards the shelf. We also see an old worn-out chair, a hat, and a violin. There is a small statue behind the chair, and on the shelves there are things like feathers, jars, and books, with straw scattered all around. If you think about the pattern and our storyline, what part of the story do you think we see here? There are lots of ways to interpret this artwork, but when we think about storytelling, I imagine this as the beginning of a story. We have just explored the setting, perhaps an old barn, and we've met the main characters, those 4 swans. In my imagination, I think about the swans having just discovered an old shelf full of interesting objects that they are eager to explore. This is the inciting incident, and the story will unfold from here. As a storyteller, do you think that this artist has done a good job at setting the scene? Do you want to know more? Do you feel as curious about the swans? What do you imagine happening next? Here is another painting that shows us part of a story. This is The Traveler by Alex Colville. What part of the story is shown here? What do you see in the painting that makes you think that? First, if you said the middle, you're right. This is the part of the story where all of the action is happening. More specifically, though, I'd say this is the moment of crisis. Something important is about to happen, but hasn't happened yet. That means it's not the climax. The main part of our story is all set up. We see a dark figure on the road right in front of the car. The artist has made it feel like we, the viewers, are right inside the car, maybe even that we are the driver, since all we can see are the steering wheel in the driver's hands. What do you think is about to happen? Alex Colville is an artist whose work usually shows the moment just before something happens, and it often feels like it will be something bad. In this example, it seems like the car might be about to hit the person on the road, but we can't know for sure. Why would an artist pick this moment? Why not just show us what happens? To answer that, think for a moment about how you feel right now looking at this painting. Do you feel scared, tense, worried? A painting like this is designed to make you feel all of those things, and it is a powerful effect for a painting. To add to that feeling, we see that the road is covered in snow, the figure outside is looking away from the car, and the speedometer shows us that the car is moving fast. Here we have another dramatic work of art. What part of the story is this? If you said the climax, you're right. Rather than the previous work where we are on the edge of our seats waiting for something to happen, in this painting by William Karelic, the explosion has occurred. The most dramatic part of the story is right in front of us. We may have a mix of feelings. of fear and shock, and questions about why this has happened. Again, the artist chose his moment very carefully. This painting was created as a warning to the viewers about what could happen in a world where countries are in conflict. It was created at a time when the Cold War was happening, when certain countries were on the verge of war. In this case, the artist wanted to show the worst moment of the story, in the hopes that we would learn and prevent it from happening. Our last image finds us approaching the end of the story. This is The Phantom Hunter by William Blair Bruce. This painting is based on a poem about a hiker who gets lost in a northern winter and doesn't survive his adventure. We see the man has already fallen and his ghost is now walking on. We are left to imagine all of the events of the story leading up to this moment, and we are here just to see the end. In each of these paintings, we have looked at artists who use stories as their subject matter. There is an old expression that says a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I think we can see how true that is. In a single image, an artwork can contain all of the elements of a setting and the characters, telling about the who, where, and when in a story. It can provide clues about what is going to happen next, and encourage us to figure out what has already happened. An artist may choose an early moment to introduce us to the story or characters, or they may choose a moment that is important, action or drama, or they may even just show us the end. This choice depends on the artist's hopes for what we will feel or learn from their artwork. Regardless of their choice, a work of art is truly a rich opportunity to explore the fun of storytelling.